Plane milling. In this video shows the plane milling operation. Plane milling cutter. Workpiece. Plane milling are used for machining flat and horizontal surfaces. This plane milling operation can be otherwise called as slab milling. According to the relative movement between the table and workpiece, the plane milling machine can be classified as up milling and down milling. Up milling. Plane milling cutter. Workpiece. In up milling, the milling cutter rotates in a direction opposite to the feed direction of the workpiece. In up milling, the material is removed by the resultant force. Down milling. Workpiece. Plane milling cutter. In down milling, the direction of milling cutter rotation is the same as the workpiece feed direction. In down milling, the resultant force presses the workpiece against the base. The cutter with high rack angle can be used for down milling. Face milling. Face milling cutter. Workpiece. In face milling, the tool axis is orthogonal to the surface to be generated. In face milling, the tool does not cut with its face, as the name of the method indicates the face milling. The peripheral cutting edges removes metal primarily and face cutting edges acts as secondary cutting edges. Straddle milling. Workpiece. Side milling cutters. Arbor. Machine vise. Straddle milling is an operation in which a pair of side milling cutters are used for machining two parallel vertical surfaces of a workpiece simultaneously. The distance between the cutter is adjusted by the spacers. Gang milling. Arbor. Side milling cutters. The gang milling is the operation of machining several surfaces of a workpiece simultaneously by feeding the table against a number of milling cutters. This method saves much machining time. In gang milling, the cutter speed is calculated from the cutters of largest diameter. Form milling. The form milling is the operation of producing irregular contours by using form cutters. Convex milling is one of the form milling operation. End milling. End milling cutter. Workpiece. End milling is an operation of producing narrow slots, grooves, ways, and vertical flat surfaces on the workpiece. End milling can be performed vertically, horizontally, or at an angle in reference to the table. Angular milling. Angle milling cutter, workpiece, arbor, table. Let us see the angular milling operation. The angular milling is the operation of producing an angular surface on a workpiece. This angular groove may be single or double angle. T-slot milling. T-slot milling cutter, workpiece. Let us see the T-slot milling operation. In T-slot milling operation, first a plain slot is cut on the workpiece by a side milling cutter. Then the T-slot milling cutter is fed from the one end of the workpiece. Gear milling. For gear milling, we need palmed gear cutter, gear blank, and indexing head. Let us see the gear milling operation. The gear milling operation is performed in a horizontal milling machine by using a formed milling cutter. The cutter carries the profile on its cutting edges corresponding to the required profile of the gap between gear teeth.